When was the last time you had to think about how you walk? Barring some terrible accident, once you learn how to walk, you don't need to learn how to do it again. When was the last time you thought about how you breathe? With something like that, we know how to do it the moment we're born, and only have to control our breathing when someone makes us conscious of it. Sorry about that, by the way. Now, let me ask you one final question. When was the last time you thought about how to throw a fireball? For anyone who's spent a decent amount of time with fighting games, the idea of not knowing how to fire a fireball is kind of funny. The motion is so ingrained into characters' movesets that basically everyone who plays these games, even semi-seriously, will be able to do it on command without even thinking about it. Now, I need you guys to think back, way back when you started playing fighting games. You probably struggled for a while to do motion inputs. Maybe you spent several days trying to figure out how to throw that fireball, and even after you got it, you might have struggled to get it consistently or do it exactly when you want. But what happened? How do people go from not being able to do something to being able to do it on command instantly and extremely fast? Well, the answer to that question is honestly pretty simple. So, let's talk about the body. We've talked before about two different types of fighting game players, being brain-based players and heart-based players. Each of these styles of play mostly focus on the mental aspect of fighting game. You've got the cold, calculating style who focuses on the data and numbers, using pre-planned strategies to systematically destroy their opponents. And then you have the balls to the wall, throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, fuck it, we ball play style. Both of these styles focus on the mental aspect of the game, using data to make your opponent mess up, or just making them look at you like you're insane and forcing them to leave the setup to take a breather. But there's a final part of fighting games that both of these types of players are missing. So that leads to the question, what is a body player? Body players are players who focus on one thing more than anything else: execution. This means complex inputs, tight frame rates, ridiculously optimal combos, and above everything else, being able to do crazy things consistently. Now, this probably makes some of you go, hold on a minute, that's all that fighting games are. And if that's you, you obviously haven't been paying attention to the last few videos, have you? Let's debunk something first. While having good execution in fighting games does help you win, having only good execution doesn't mean you'll win against good players. In fact, having literally nothing apart from godlike execution skills will probably make you really easy to beat. Let's say that you know an optimal combo. You'll want to use it consistently, so you have to win less interactions against your opponent. So you're going to consistently do nothing but fish for the start of that combo. And since you're doing nothing but going for that combo, your opponent's just going to counter you like, what? Your execution skills on their own aren't going to win you the entire game. But that doesn't mean that they're not important. Hell, in fact, it's one of, if not the most important aspects of fighting games, because you use execution at all levels of competition, from the button mashers to the pro players at the top of the game. Like, there are so many layers of execution that you probably don't even think about. So, we got the literal bare-bones basics of being able to move your character and use your normal moves. We'll put blocking on this layer too, even though most players, even the good ones, have no idea how to do this. Above that, you got the motion inputs like your quarter circle forward, your dragon punch, your quarter circle back, and your other ones. After that, we got the basics for combos like your links and your cancels, and then we just keep going and going and going until we get shit like this. This is called layer 37, by the way. Now, there isn't any actual specific order of layers to learn about, because it's just not really how learning works. But once you start to learn crazy shit like what the fuck kind of combo this is, you can start to see it in parts that go into it, and how many layers of things you need to learn in order to do the crazy shit. It's why trying to break up combos and learning bits of them helps so much, because there's a bunch of different techniques that go into them. But how do you learn something like this anyway? Well, like most of the things, there's a process that you need to go through in order to actually get it into your muscle memory, so you can do it whenever you need. Start performing the action in a safe environment. For our argument, this is obviously training mode. Once you land it consistently, you'll need to turn up the pressure a little bit. Try doing it several times in a row without dropping it, facing both directions. You can't forget about your player 2 1-2 side. Then run a set with a friend and go for the technique when the opportunity presents itself. Don't force it because you'll be predictable like we talked about earlier. Try and find where it would naturally fit. Keep doing this and eventually you can go back down the scale to a scenario where the pressure isn't as intense and you'll be able to do it easily. That's another great strength for the body players. Performing under pressure. In a competitive environment, there will be situations that cause players to feel a certain amount of stress. Be this fighting a very strong opponent, going on large losing streaks, or making it really far into a tournament bracket. Players will find themselves in situations where things become intense and it weighs heavily on their mental game. While most players in this situation begin to panic and try to rush to gain control or force the game to enter a favorable state, body players are able to remain calm throughout the entire situation. The more we panic, the more mistakes we make, both in our game plan becoming sloppy and our execution becoming extremely sloppy. It's very common for players to drop combos or even special moves in high intensity situations due to them panicking about the situation they find themselves in. However, due to the mental fortitude of good body players, they don't panic as much because they've drilled the execution of their moves so much that messing it up literally becomes impossible. If you combine this mental fortitude and the inability to mess up combos and moves with a character that demands a lot from the player, you get an absolute monster that nobody can stop. See, fighting game characters range on a scale on how difficult they are. You got characters that make the game feel like you're playing on easy baby mode, and then you have characters that are literally known for sending people to the hospital due to the wrist injuries they cause. Generally, a lot of players will find an easier character that's considered strong and stick with them in order to get really good results really quickly, by relying on their good fundamentals or just broken tactics. However, there's sometimes characters who are theoretically extremely strong, but the barrier to entry for them is just so much higher than other characters that you have to do so much more work than other players. Sometimes this is due to complex system mechanics, but most of the time it's just a heavy execution requirement. Characters like Johnny from Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R and Naoto from BlazBlue Central Fiction are amazing examples of this, being really good characters with great tools, but having an extremely high skill floor due to how hard the mechanics are. Especially with Naoto being extremely fucking difficult to even just do your bread and butter combos. Like, what the fuck am I looking at, Alexis? This means when you see people playing these characters at a high level, it's even more impressive because, Jesus Christ, this stuff is really hard to do. But none of it is impossible, and here comes a massive question. Should fighting games make it so that characters are powerful just because they're hard to use? If a hard character is the best character in the game, isn't that making it so that execution is extremely important to play a high-tier character and thus making the point we made at the start correct? Well, no, and here's why. Different characters are able to offer players different experiences and options in given situations. However, they generally have a downside to their strengths that the player either needs to overcome or completely avoid, because no matter how good they are as that character, in that aspect, you literally can't do anything. Let's take Happy Chaos as an example. Chaos has amazing full-screen zoning, up-close pressure, and combo conversion ability, making him an absolute nightmare to defend against, as he's able to suffocate you with ridiculous pressure, and any mistake leads to you losing a bunch of health. However, he has some of the worst defense in the game, having only a standard backdash and a 5-frame normal to use on defense. Chaos has 0 invincible reversals, even with meter, meaning once an opponent is on him, he doesn't have many options to fall back on when they feel themselves getting stuck in the corner. Characters need these downsides in order to be considered balanced. Now, the counter-argument for why high execution shouldn't be considered a downside is because unlike Chaos's bad defense, where you have less options than the other player, meaning you can't avoid it, characters with hard execution requirements can be cracked by practicing their execution over and over and over again until you have it to a point where you can't fail. But the execution isn't the problem here. The execution is a barrier that the player needs to overcome. However, once they have overcome it, they still need to be able to use the new technique that they found. It's all good knowing how to make Giovanna plus 13. What the fuck? That can't be right. But if you have no idea how to follow up with good pressure that makes the plus frames terrifying, then you basically just waste the advantage. Or if you don't know what your enemy is going to do after it, you could get absolutely destroyed by it. It's not just about knowing how to do the technique, it's about knowing how to apply it in any given situation. And that's the thing about these types of players. It's all good putting everything you can into one of the free types, but you'll find yourself lacking in specific things that you won't be able to do. The best fighting game players are able to embody pieces of brain, heart, and body players in order to absolutely dominate their opponents. So, next time you're playing the game and you're struggling, instead of instantly hitting the lab or running it back getting more game sense, sit down and think about a different way to learn how to deal with something, and give that a shot. It might help you improve faster, and it'll definitely make you a more well-rounded player. I've been GekkoSquirrel, and you were watching fucking Disney Channel. I don't know, the video's over now, go home.